Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes as some more people join. So thank you. Welcome to our second Cannabis Listen and Learn session. We'll get started now. So my name is Alex Cousins. I'm a management analyst for the city of Claremont, and I'll be leading these sessions as well as taking any input for our cannabis initiative. So the purpose of this meeting, we have prepared a brief overview and presentation, but the majority of the meeting will be reserved for feedback from the community. So after the presentation, we'll open up the meeting to public comment, and you'll be able to make any comments regarding the cannabis initiative, zoning regulation in the city of Claremont. So the City Council will consider these regulations and ordinances later this year. We'll be holding another Cannabis Listen and Learn session in September, where we will be bringing additional zoning and regulations to the community for input. So during this community listening session, no decisions will be made. The purpose of this meeting is to gather feedback from the community on cannabis regulation and zoning. And while there may be council members and commissioners viewing this webinar, they're only here to listen and will not participate. So if you wish to speak to them, we recommend you contact them outside of this meeting. So just to give an overview of the cannabis market, what is out there and what cities are regulating. So the state of California has this track and trace system that tracks the product from the seed all the way to the consumer. So one of these stages is cultivation. So you can see here, this is an indoor grow operation. It's a newer type of business, but now it's about 80% of the total cannabis, legal cannabis produced in the state of California. So you can see here, these are the yellow tags that go on each of the products. And through that system, consumers, you track the product to the consumer. So the state is able to see where this product came from, ensure that it is safe for consumers to use. The next one is manufacturing. So the legalization of cannabis has led to the popularity of different cannabis products, such as tinctures, edibles, drinks, and oils. You can see in this picture, this is an oil type product. So people can use this in baking. They can take it just by itself. And then on the right here is a drink product. So it looks like almost any other beverage, but people can get those benefits, whatever they're looking for out of cannabis without having to smoke a product. And with the reduced stigma and increased accessibility of cannabis, one of the largest growing cannabis consuming groups are those aged 55 or older. So these types of products really appeal to them. It gives them a good introduction to cannabis and allows them to consume it without, again, having to smoke a product. So for manufacturing, the machine on the left turns the cannabis plant into oil. So you have the bud product, which most of us think of when we think of cannabis, and that turns it into that oil that was shown on the previous slide. And then the right is a cannabis kitchen. So it looks like almost any other industrial kitchen where they can turn those oils into something like a gummy or an edible, like a brownie or a cookie. So next is distribution, and they are the middleman between the cultivator or manufacturer and the retail store. So they act as a warehouse between those, but these are also regulated by cities in the state. So you can see this is just a shelf holding cannabis products that will ultimately go to a retail store. And here's just a location in the industrial center that it doesn't look anything else. It doesn't look like anything out of the ordinary. So for retail and dispensaries, this is typically what we think of when we think of a cannabis business. They've gone through significant changes with regulation over the years, and they become very high quality. Consumers associate them, with certain brands, so they look more like a tech store than what we think of as a traditional cannabis dispensary type. So in these stores, consumers can learn about the different cannabis products and their qualities. And then there's people working there, store assistants or bud tenders that are able to answer their questions and help them find a product. So these are highly regulated by local jurisdictions to ensure there's limited spillover into the community and operations are conducted safely. And we'll go over some of the options that local jurisdictions have when they regulate these businesses. So here's just another store. It looks like a speakeasy type. And then for a non-storefront retail delivery, so this is another popular way for consumers to purchase cannabis products. It looks just like any other van. The state allows these delivery businesses to hold up to $10,000 in cannabis within the vehicle at any time, and up to that $5,000 can be unordered. So there's a couple different methods that businesses take when conducting these deliveries. One of them is a beehive delivery method where they'll have their physical location and they'll go back and forth getting the products. There's the ice cream truck method where they'll hold these products since they can have up to 5,000 in the truck, and they'll drive around, and when they get an order, they'll go and deliver the product. Or just a pizza delivery method where they'll run out whenever there's a delivery ordered. So testing laboratory, there's a state requirement that all cannabis batches have to be tested. These tests make sure that the cannabis product is free of contaminants and that they're labeled with accurate information so the consumer knows what they're getting and what they're putting in their body. So a lot of these products will have a code on them that you can scan, and then it'll go to a website showing it was tested, here's what the cannabis cannabinoids and terpenes are, so you have a good understanding. For micro businesses, these are a vertically integrated business that allow up to 3 types of activities in one facility. So this could be cultivation, manufacturing, retail, distribution, all those ones we went over earlier, but all under one roof. So a business could grow its own cannabis products, manufacture it into an edible product, and then sell it with other products all in that same space. So just for a brief overview of Claremont's cannabis regulation history, in 2006, in response to the California's legalization of medical cannabis, the city of Claremont City Council adopted a ban on all commercial cannabis businesses. And then in 2016, in response to California's Proposition 64, which legalized cannabis products for adults, the City Council adopted another ordinance to continue its prohibition on both medicinal and adult use commercial cannabis operations. In 2019, the City Council would again reaffirm this ordinance until there are better zoning and regulation practices to follow by viewing other cities in the state. In 2021, during the City Council workshop, the council requested city staff to engage the community in a discussion focused on cannabis regulation. And then 2022, city staff and the city's consultant HDL held 2 cannabis community workshops where they shared information regarding cannabis businesses and regulations permitted by local jurisdictions. And as a result of those meetings and the input we received from the community, the City Council placed Measure CT on the November 2022 general municipal election. So just to go over that measure, in November 2022, the Claremont voters passed Measure CT by 61%. So it taxed all components of the cannabis industry, should they ever be permitted in Claremont. And it set a gross receipts tax for the sale of cannabis and industrial hemp products, established a tax on cannabis hemp sales, delivery, cultivation, processing, testing, and distribution in the city, whether they were permitted or not. So earlier this year, the council established the tax rates. So for retail businesses, for both the storefront and the delivery, it would be a 6% of gross receipts. Cultivation businesses, the greater of 3%, or between $2 and $10 per square foot, depending on the lighting used. So whether they're doing that indoor cultivation that we showed or some type of outdoor cultivation. For testing laboratories, it's 2% of gross receipts. Distribution businesses is 3% of gross receipts, and manufacturing processing businesses, 4% of gross receipts. So all other cannabis businesses would also be 4% if there is any new businesses in the future. So for cannabis deliveries are currently permitted from outside cannabis businesses into the city of Claremont pursuant to state law. Most deliveries currently occurring are from cannabis businesses licensed in other jurisdictions, so they're following state regulations and other local jurisdictions regulations. And we're working with those outside cannabis delivery businesses to become permitted with the city of Claremont and paying the city's tax. So for revenue from cannabis businesses, the city's consultant HDL identified cannabis retail as the most supported and demanded business type in our community. So if cannabis businesses, retail businesses are permitted, HDL estimates that the city could generate approximately $300,000 per retail store annually in revenue. So for the city to allow licensure and to allow these cannabis businesses, they must have both local approval and state licenses to operate. Local jurisdictions are given a substantial amount of authority to regulate commercial cannabis within their jurisdiction. So for zoning and land use, they would have buffer requirements. So these are buffers from sensitive zones such as K through 12 schools. Local jurisdictions can implement overlay zones. So these are zones where in the city only cannabis can go in these zones and not other ones. For transportation requirements, we could have requirements on how much cash can be carried at one time in the vehicle, as well as insurance requirements for the vehicles and the drivers. For security, you can require a certain amount of security guards on the premises, or require that the local police department has access to the business's surveillance cameras. So if there are any issues, they can immediately see what is going on at that site. You can restrict cannabis consumption on the business property. So whether that's indoors or outdoors on the retail business, and then have restrictions for inventory, such as how the businesses store their product overnight to keep it safe, and limiting consumer access to products. So one of the things that a lot of these businesses do now is you can view the products underneath a glass case, but you can't touch it directly. So you're not going to have anyone stealing it or being able to mishandle it. You then talk to a store or a bud tender, and they'll bring the product out to you. So for zoning and buffering, the state-sensitive buffering defaults can be increased or decreased by local jurisdictions. The current state defaults are 600 feet between other licensed cannabis businesses and K through 12 schools, daycares, and other youth centers. So businesses can be further restricted to certain planning zones if the local jurisdiction wishes to do so. So this would be things like commercial zones or mixed use districts. So here we have a map of the city of Claremont and some of the buffer zones. So this displays the 600-foot buffer zone around K through 12 schools and other sensitive uses such as daycares. And on the next slides, you'll be able to see it more clearly zooming in. So while it's not a state regulation, the city received a reciprocal request from the city of Pomona to adopt a 1,000-foot land use buffer from their city boundaries if the city does allow cannabis businesses. And this is reflected in this red line here. So it's unlikely for city staff to recommend lowering the 600-foot buffer unless that is something requested by the community, and that 600-foot buffer around sensitive zones is reflected in this blue. So here we can see this is North Claremont. So just for reference, here's baseline, and then we have Foothill here. So in this black, these are the certain business zones, non-residential zones where we currently allow businesses to operate. So you can see here's a business and industrial park. Here is another commercial area, as well as up here, the Vons. So you can see the buffer zones here, the blues, and then these greens are the Hughes Center and the Yak. So the areas that are not included in these blue zones would currently, they're outside of those sensitive use zones. So they could allow cannabis businesses. So here you can see South Claremont, here's First Street, and then Indian Hill and Bonita. So the village here is outside of those sensitive use zones, and village expansion here, as well as South Village, and then some business industrial park here. So you can better see the red Pomona buffer. So this is 1,000 feet from the Pomona border, which encompasses most of that I-10 up to San Jose. So the state of California and local jurisdictions realize the impact that the war on drugs has had on marginalized communities. And they share that the goal of social equity is to promote equitable ownership and employment opportunities in the cannabis industry in order to decrease disparities in life outcomes for marginalized communities, and to address the disproportionate impacts of the war on drugs in these communities. So there's some things that some cities have done, social equity programs, and these are a way to assist those that may have been impacted by the war on drugs. So some of their solutions have been permits set aside for equity applicants. So if a local jurisdiction had 3 possible permits, they may set aside 1 for an equity applicant. They may have an expedited application process for social equity, may have a requirement for local hires as equity hires, tax revenue towards reinvesting in marginalized communities, or application fee waivers to bring down the costs for those social equity applicants. So that concludes our presentation. We'll now move on to the public comment section. If you'd like to speak, you can raise your hand. If you're on computer, you can click reactions and then raise hand, or if you're on your phone, click more at the bottom and then raise hand, and we'll let you in to speak. We're not seeing anyone raise their hands yet. Oh, let's see here. So in response to that question, Mr. Garcia, you're asking if a property is required with the application. At this time, we don't have an answer to that. Once we get to a draft regulation and requirements for the businesses, then we'd be able to answer this. But this is just an early conversation about the zoning requirements, regulations. So we're happy to take any input that you have, regarding the application process. Russ, I'm going to click to allow you to talk now.
Hey there, you can hear me?
Can hear you.
Deal. 2 quick questions. You showed on one of the early slides the, we'll call it seed to retail cycle, right? From planting to final sale. Perfect. The $300,000 number that is proposed by, I suppose, one of the, who was it, HDL or something like that, that the city would receive. is that based on being involved in just the retail, or is it involved in each step along the way in Claremont?
So that 300,000 figure is just based on retail. So it's the averages that we've seen from jurisdictions similar in size to us and similar to the amount of businesses that could be permitted and the gross receipts that they've been able to generate.
And that's on a per store basis?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. And that is based on having one or several. I mean, it seems a little bit odd that you could have 5 stores each doing 300 or one store doing 300 to the city equally. In other words, the more stores you have, it dilutes. Every additional store dilutes the revenues for the previous ones, right?
Yeah, it's, some areas that permit one can do significantly more than 300,000, but 300,000 is a good starting point for what we would anticipate for each of these businesses permitting. So, two businesses around 600,000, three around 900,000 plus.
Right, but I mean, if you had 40 of them, it wouldn't be 1.2 or whatever. Or
no,
12.
Exactly. Yeah, you'd have a limit to it.
Yeah.
And some businesses do generate more in gross receipts. Some are larger. So we have Stizzy in Pomona, which generates over 2 million a year for the city of Pomona. But then there's other smaller stores, smaller cities, similar to us, where they can generate over 300,000 per store and still permit, something like 4 or 5 businesses within their jurisdiction.
Okay, and then if I may continue until somebody else raises their hand. Opportunity sites. Not too long ago, there was a week before, there was a city council meeting where people came up to the public comment and came up with every other reason on the planet to not have permanent supportive housing in their neighborhood besides the real one, where they just don't want it. They're like, oh yeah, the sidewalks, oh yeah, the lighting, oh yeah, the street width. And it's like, shut up, you just don't want it, right? What are the opportunity sites that you've identified for retail, which seems to be the basis of the revenue estimate, as you said, but any of these other steps in between? Because as I see it, Claremont is in an absolutely perfect position to capture pretty much the whole schmear. In other words, we have a botanical garden, we have 5 colleges, we have people who really know how to grow stuff, we have areas that are that are just left fallow. You could have in Claremont and tax every one of these steps, just as your chart says. You have later on a chart that shows how much each step would be, the Claremont cut from each step, right? And so my question is, if we were to attract support and somehow put in something for each of these steps, how much could the city make and where would those be?
So the revenue projections that we have are just for retail.
I understand.
I don't have figures at this time. But if it's something that the community desires and the council desires to have more than retail, then I think there is space in the city to allow that. Here's that map again, just to show some of the areas that we have in the city outside of those buffer zones and within commercial industrial areas.
But these are for all the circles and so forth here are for retail, not for growing, processing, a lab, etc. Correct?
They would be for any cannabis business.
Oh, okay. So that's right. I didn't understand that. Okay, that's where I was. Perfect. Okay, so that if you were to encompass a full cycle, any estimate on what that multiple would be then for the city?
I don't have one at this time.
Not even a hip shot.
No, it's easier to estimate the retail.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, that's I'm taking your number as accurate for that, but it seems like we're leaving an enormous amount of money on the table, not capturing the whole schmear. But it's up to, I mean, I understand. I just didn't know if we had a plan for that. Okay.
All right, thanks, Russ. Any other questions? I see we have another raised hand. So
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm good for now.
All right. Charlotte, I see your hand is raised, so if you'd like to unmute yourself.
All right. Are you able to hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. My question is there, well, what is the retail, the square footage that you are basing the revenue off of for retail spaces? And is there, well, let's ask that. And then I was wondering if there's a minimum.
So from what we've seen, that the actual size of the store doesn't have a huge impact on the revenue. Of course, 100 square feet probably won't do as well as something that's like 1,000. But that number that HDL came up with was based on some of the available retail spaces that we have in the city and industrial, but it wasn't based on certain square foot sizes of the businesses.
Is there anything though in the, like is there a minimum, like something can be, you want to start at a certain size or?
Yeah, so the city could have requirements on the business's minimum square foot, and that's something we could do during that regulation when we put together those and present them to the council.
Okay. Thank you. That was it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Keith, I see your hand is raised. So if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I want to make sure I understand. I'm looking at the map and I'm seeing, a lot of black properties there around the auto center, but that's also within the red boundary for its proximity to Pomona. So I'm thinking those are not options. You're just saying it's zoned so that if the proximity restriction were not there, then they would be options. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah. So when Pomona was going through their efforts, they requested we requested 1,000-foot buffer, and they've done the same. So it's likely we will stick with that. It's just the zone is shown since it is a commercial property.
Okay, and my next question is the 600-foot buffer around Oakmont School, for example, overlaps part of Pepper Tree Square on Arrow and Indian Hill. The city could increase that buffer. Is that correct?
That's correct. We could increase the buffer. It would likely be for all schools instead of just one or the other.
Okay, so then my comment is that at Pepper Tree Square, we actually had a lot of break-ins to a pharmacy there. They came through the back door, they came through the nail salon next door, just broke through the wall, they came through the ceiling. So just having a pharmacy there, even with signs saying we don't have opioids, there was a lot of break-in. And they had to put bulletproof glass in front of their operation there. So could you expand on security measures that go along with these retail stores?
Yeah, and so we've spoken to other cities and tried to get an understanding of if they've had any issues with crime. We've also looked over some other studies that have been done in the San Diego area, and what they found was if you compare a cannabis retail store to something like an Applebee's or a Bevmo, they have about a third of the police calls that those other businesses have. So the security requirements that the city can have are cash on hand, overnight. We could also require that they have security 24/7. So they could have someone on the premises even at night during those times that there could be potential break-ins. Requirements for even storing the cash, so if it has to be in a certain safe for the products, having a limited amount on the premises, so there's not, it's not enticing people to break in, as well as the surveillance. So other jurisdictions have required the businesses to share the surveillance cameras with the police. I don't think it's expected that the police would be monitoring these 24/7. But if some call is made, then the police can look immediately and see if there is something going on at the property and respond to that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. The initial response of people we know is, what the heck would we be doing putting it in Pepper Tree Square? We've had a smoke shop there that are selling drug paraphernalia that once it's used, then it subjects a person to arrest. That's been a problem for a long time. I just want to make that comment. And that's the initial reaction of people who live nearby.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. Ms. McGee, would you like to make your comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of reiterate the importance of like a comprehensive social equity program. I know that we are, obviously on the smaller side of the cities, but a social equity program that might more mimic what Oakland did and not what LA did in terms of requiring the businesses to have the real estate locked down before even applying for the license. That's what LA did, and then the businesses have had to sit on paying that lease for months and even years while waiting for the city to decide, whereas Oakland did not have that provision. So a lot of social equity applicants in LA lost all of their savings and their investments because they had invested all in the real estate and the space prior to even getting the license. So I think that just looking at social equity programs, what has worked in California, New York, and what hasn't worked, and just learning those lessons would be really important in our city. That's all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll look further into that Oakland social equity program. I appreciate your input.
Mm-hmm.
Russ, I see your hand is still raised. I'm not sure if you want to make any additional comment. So I see Aline, you asked when the city will start accepting applications. So we don't have cannabis regulations at this time. The city council would have to go through the process, and planning commission. So nothing's been approved at this time. So we don't have a date for accepting applications, or even if we would accept applications. If you haven't done so already, you can email me to be added to our interested parties list. So if we do have any updates in the future and any updates regarding these community meetings, you'll be the first to know. We don't have any other raised hands at this time. If you want to make any comments regarding zoning, regulation, all been great points. Let's see. Arlene, if you'd like to make your comment, can unmute yourself. Arlene, you're still muted. If you'd like to make a comment, or you can lower your hand. Okay, thank you. Charlotte, if you'd like to make another comment, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering too, if there's a more detailed map on the lower side, closer to the old village. Just so, to be clear about, just more, a more of a zoom in type of map, if more is available or can be made available.
Yeah, so we'll have that on our website. The map we have is a PDF, so it allows for easy zooming. You can kind of see it on this map here, where the current buffers would be. So Bonita and Indian Hill here, but we will have that available on our website for you as well.
So that's Indian Hill. That's the one after college.
Yes, right.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see my cursor, but
Yep, that's
this area.
Indian. Okay, gotcha.
Do you have any other comments?
Oh, nope, I can lower my hand.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. So I see we have an anonymous attendee asked, would the presence of on-site security increase safety in those areas? There's a potential. It's always good to have more eyes on the area, as well as having someone that looks like a security guard. It may dissuade some others from committing crimes in the area and breaking into other businesses. Celine asks, is the city going to put a limitation on the number of licenses issued per license type? Seems to be detrimental to sustainability to businesses and feasible revenue to the city. So at this time, I don't have an answer. Once we get closer to making recommendations to the city council, I think there's a couple different models that we've observed across the state. So whether that's having no license restrictions, but having requirements for those buffer zones and from other businesses, so that kind of restricts itself, or having restrictions on license types, which a lot of jurisdictions seem to do, similar to our neighbor Pomona, where they had 2 licenses and then they'll be adding some more. So at this time, we're unsure which model we would be recommending, but I appreciate your input regarding sustainability and feasibility for revenue. Mr. Keith, there you go. You can unmute yourself now.
Thank you. So again, with the buffer zones around schools, you're showing it at 600 feet. What other rules have other cities adopted regarding school buffers?
So
Are they all 600 feet?
There's all different types. A lot of them take the default, but some will do 750 square feet, some will do 1,000. And we see that in some of the larger jurisdictions. The city of Claremont has a lot of schools spread out. So if we did a 1,000-foot buffer, we'd have even fewer commercial spaces available. And there's, cities have done all different types of buffer distances. Do you have any other comments, Mr. Keith?
Well, I think locations near a freeway will be highly sought after by the business owner, thinking people will drive here and, come and purchase product. So they'd be very likely to be developed. And that's what happens in South Claremont.
Go ahead, thank you. I don't see any other rates. Oh, there we go. Sue, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can make a comment now.
Okay. Just a minute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I have one big question. Why would you want to locate these businesses in an area like in the south part of town it has had so many problems with crime and human trafficking, which often involves substance abuse or use of or the selling of highly lethal drugs. I can't understand why you would want to even go there when the problems have been so immense over the last 2 years.
So I think you brought up some great points too, and some of the areas where the community is focused on is this type of area right below the freeway. So South Claremont, and that's within this buffer. So we wouldn't be recommending businesses to go here. And regarding the drug issues, most of the issues now are related to harder drugs. So a lot of people, we've had this whole perception of cannabis over the years with the war on drugs. But with the legalization of adult use and medicinal cannabis, there's a lot of people of all age ranges that have healthy relationships with cannabis, and they're able to find beneficial uses for it. Regarding the crime issue, it's a perception that having these businesses increases crime. What we've seen from discussing with other cities that have allowed them, very, very few issues come with these. Studies have been done on crime relating to cannabis businesses, and those haven't shown a significant impact. And some even show that there's a reduce in crime due to having more eyes on the street and the perception of having high security.
And could I ask you, is Pepper Tree also included in there?
There's a portion of Pepper Tree, so that is this MU1 here, and I can zoom in. So about half or so is within the buffer zone, and then the rest of this is excluded. So there's a possibility that cannabis could be allowed there.
But what parts? I can't understand what you're saying. There's MU1 and so most of Pepper Tree is in that lower area. Most of it.
Yes, that's correct. So it would have to be 600 feet away from the school. So there's only some of the area here would be allowed, and a lot of this lower part is parking lot too, and along this wall.
But I'm saying this area I can't point because the green area is that area. Will that be fair game?
So you're talking about like these types of parcels here where it's
No, over at Pepper Tree. I'm looking at Pepper Tree.
Yeah, so the blacked out area, businesses could be permitted in those locations, but not the ones that are within 600 feet of the schools.
Okay, the blackout area, but not the green area below it.
No.
Okay, that's most of Pepper Tree. Okay, I thank you for your answers. I don't want to believe it, but that's okay. I guess it just seems there are connections. No one could say that there are no connections between cannabis and other drugs. I mean, that would be like saying there's no connections between alcohol and other kinds of, between hard liquor and beer, and there just are connections. And I guess you can't make that comparison to alcohol. And we all know there are connections. I mean, we don't have to be a rocket scientist to know, not to know that there are connections. And so I really am concerned about taking an area that has been inundated, and we're talking about all that south part of town, south of the Arrow and south of the railroad tracks, actually, and where we've had a lot of problems and locating cannabis selling there. As soon as I knew that we would, have, be selling cannabis in town, which I'm not against. But as soon as I knew we would be selling cannabis in town, I said, yeah, I know where they'll point it. And so that's what hurt. That's what really scares me. I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer that you would stay away from a part of town that has been concerned, fighting crime, I'm concerned about human trafficking, and it just seems like you would stay away from our part of town. Sorry, that's what I feel. I think it's not right. And we know there are connections. You can't tell me there aren't.
Okay, thank you for your comments. We go with Mr. Keith. Can make an additional comment now.
Thank you. We actually have relatives who live very close to Oakland and in Oakland Hills, and we're there frequently. I realize they have a lot of experience selling, but your comment that having a business can lower the amount of crime, that depends on where you started. And we don't want to be anywhere near any part of Claremont, anywhere near what's going on in Oakland in terms of crime. So that comment, I hope you won't be making to others, is that we could lower the amount of crime associated with drugs if we opened a store such as this. Clearly, it attracts people who are in business. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I typically wouldn't associate Claremont with Oakland. I think they have a bunch of other issues going on that the city of Claremont is fortunately, not had at that scale. And that's just based on some academic studies that have been done on cannabis businesses in Colorado and California tracking crime. Let me see. So I see your hand is still raised. I'm not sure if you want to make an additional comment. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, you're welcome to make another comment, or you can lower your hand. So we don't have any other hands raised. If you'd like to make any comment or recommendations to cannabis businesses, zoning requirements, other business requirements that we could have, please raise your hand. So I just want to go over this map again, just to show, I know there was some emphasis on South Claremont. You can see a significant portion of it is blocked out with this Pomona buffer, as well as the sensitive use zones here. So there is a small part of Pepper Tree there, as well as this Village South zones here, and then this business industrial park. And it's not the whole part of it, with this Pomona buffer blocks it out, and then the village here. But then the northern part of Claremont, there's this business industrial park area, as well as the Trader Joe's and Pepper Doubletree here, as well as another commercial space here. We don't have any raised hands. There we go. So you'd like to unmute yourself, you can make another comment now.
Just like to ask you, along Foothill, is that blocked off most of it? Like where Sprouts and some of
Yeah, so that the Sprouts area is down here, and that's within. So part of it's in that 1,000-foot Pomona buffer, and then the other part is in the school buffer. So none of those areas would be allowed for cannabis retail businesses or cannabis businesses.
You know, it would be interesting to see, because I'm getting a picture here, which is traditional. Would be interesting to see where, without all of this, exactly where the stores can be located. In Berkeley, there's a cannabis store right next to Trader Joe's. So I don't know how they decided, and it seems to be working well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's right in the same parking lot as Trader Joe's. I'm not saying to locate it because I don't think we have the room in that area, but I don't quite understand why that area is it mountain? It doesn't seem, why is it blacked out along the SP10, SB9, SB9? Why is that blacked out?
So the blacked out is where they could go. So these are the zones.
I'm sorry.
Just scrolling down. So those are the zones that currently allow commercial or retail businesses in the city.
Okay.
So yeah, you have the Trader Joe's here, and those are outside of these buffer zones too. So they could allow cannabis businesses.
I agree with Jim. If I were you, I wouldn't compare to Oakland. I would look at what communities like Berkeley or Alameda, or if you're looking at the Bay Area, some of the communities in the Bay Area that are very different. I don't even know if Alameda has cannabis sales, but that are very different than Oakland. Oakland is a big city, and it's been known for a lot of crime and difficulties.
Thank you for your comments. Oh, see, I see you raise your hand again. Sorry. If you'd like to add on to that, you can unmute yourself. Okay. Let's see. So I have a last chance for anyone that you're welcome to type your questions. If you're not comfortable speaking now, you're also welcome to email me. So my email is here, acousins@ci.claremont.ca.us. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. We'll have some updates on our website, most likely early next week, with this presentation, as well as the updated map. So if you do have any other concerns, suggestions, questions, feel free to give me an email, or you can call me the 909-399-5323. Give everyone just another minute. Mr. Binder. Here, you can unmute yourself now, Mr. Binder.
Yeah, hi there. Real quick question. How many people were in this session?
We have, it's fluctuated over the last hour, but between 25 to 35.
Okay. Just a point of curiosity. No real question other than that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll be holding another session. It's in September. If you'd like to be added to our interested parties list, please feel free to give me an email, or you can send your email in this chat, and then you'll receive any updates on the Cannabis Initiative in the future. Okay, seeing no other raised hands, can conclude our second Cannabis Listening and Learn session. I appreciate you all spending your morning with us. We'll be having another meeting in September that will be later in the afternoon, and it will be in person. So thank you all again. Oh, let's see, we have, okay, let's see the emails. Those will be added to our email list. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.